Hello, friends. Today you will hear the incredible story of the most famous battleship of World War II, the Bismarck. Don't forget to support the channel with a like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts in the comments. Your activity helps us bring more powerful historical stories to life. The battleship Bismarck was the pride and symbol of Nazi Germany's naval power. It was one of the most advanced warships of its time, over 250 meters long, armored to withstand heavy shells, and armed with guns capable of piercing any defense the Allies could field. Its departure into the Atlantic in the spring of 1941 sent shockwaves through Britain. The Royal Navy understood that the Bismarck threatened the entire lifeline of supply routes that kept the United Kingdom alive. On May 20th, the Bismarck, accompanied by the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen, launched Operation Reinebung. Their mission was deadly simple: break into the Atlantic and destroy Allied merchant shipping. In its very first clash, the Bismarck demonstrated its terrifying power. On May 24th, in the legendary Battle of the Denmark Strait, the Bismarck sank Britain's pride, the battlecruiser HMS Hood, in a matter of minutes. A massive explosion tore the ship apart, killing nearly all her crew. The world was stunned. The Hood, long thought to be invincible, was gone. It was a shocking but undeniable victory for the German battleship. Yet triumph turned quickly to tragedy. The destruction of the Hood enraged Britain and sparked one of the greatest naval hunts in history. The Royal Navy threw everything it had into the chase: dozens of ships, aircraft carriers, destroyers, and reconnaissance planes, all with one goal: to bring down the Bismarck. Though the German battleship tried to escape, the British were relentless, determined not to let such a monster roam the seas freely. The story of the Bismarck became a legend of both glory and doom, a tale of unmatched power that ended in inevitable destruction when the mightiest ship of its age could not survive against an entire nation's fury. The hunt for the Bismarck became a desperate race against time. After sinking the Hood, the German battleship was damaged during the fight with HMS Prince of Wales. Though still formidable, it was leaking fuel and could not remain hidden forever. British aircraft carriers were dispatched, and reconnaissance planes scoured the North Atlantic. Churchill himself gave the order: sink the Bismarck at all costs. On May 26, Swordfish torpedo bombers from the carrier Ark Royal launched a daring attack in stormy weather. These slow, fragile biplanes seemed laughably outdated against such a giant, yet they achieved the impossible. One torpedo struck the Bismarck's rudder, jamming it and leaving the battleship unable to steer. Now, the pride of the German Navy was doomed to circle helplessly while the British fleet closed in. The next morning, May 27, 1941, the final battle began. Dozens of British ships surrounded the Bismarck. Battleships King George V and Rodney opened fire at close range, pounding the German colossus with shell after shell. Despite catastrophic damage, the Bismarck refused to surrender. Its crew fought to the last, even as fires raged across the decks and turrets were blasted apart. After hours of relentless bombardment, the once mighty battleship was nothing but a burning wreck. To prevent capture, German sailors scuttled the ship, opening valves and detonating charges. At 10:40 a.m., the Bismarck slipped beneath the waves, taking over 2,000 men with her. Only around 110 survived. The sea swallowed the pride of the Kriegsmarine, and with it, Germany's dream of ruling the Atlantic. The legend of the Bismarck lived on. In just one mission, it destroyed Britain's most famous warship, but its own destruction showed the world that even the most powerful battleship could not stand against the combined might of an entire fleet. It was a story of triumph and tragedy, of glory and downfall, a reminder that war at sea spares no one. Decades after the Bismarck's dramatic end, the story of the mighty battleship refused to fade. For years, historians, sailors, and treasure hunters debated what had really happened on that fateful day in May 1941. Was the Bismarck sunk by British gunfire, or did her crew succeed in scuttling her to prevent capture? The mystery only deepened the legend. In 1989, oceanographer Robert Ballard, the same man who discovered the wreck of the Titanic, led an expedition to find the Bismarck. Using advanced submersibles, his team finally located the ship, resting more than 4,700 meters below the surface of the Atlantic. What they saw was awe-inspiring. The Bismarck lay upright on the seabed, her hull remarkably well preserved, her massive guns still pointing defiantly into the darkness. The wreck told its own story. Enormous damage from British shells and torpedoes was clear, but evidence also suggested that the crew had indeed scuttled the ship. The combination of relentless bombardment and German determination had sealed the fate of the battleship. Even in defeat, the Bismarck went down on her own terms. Today, the Bismarck remains one of the most iconic warships in history. It embodied both the terrifying power of naval warfare and the ultimate vulnerability of even the strongest vessel. Its brief but explosive career, from its triumph over the Hood to its fiery end in the Atlantic, has become a symbol of both human ingenuity and the tragic cost of war. And so, the saga of the Bismarck closes like a chapter written in fire and steel. Built as the mightiest battleship of its time, it sailed into history with thunderous guns and a reputation for invincibility. In one moment of triumph, it shattered Britain's pride by sending HMS Hood to the depths. Yet within days, that same triumph brought its doom, as the Royal Navy united to hunt it down at any cost. When the Bismarck slipped beneath the Atlantic waves on May 27, 1941, it carried with it more than 2,000 souls, sailors who fought until the very end. For Germany, it was the loss of a weapon that could never be replaced. For Britain, it was proof that no enemy, no matter how fearsome, could withstand determination and unity. Decades later, as explorers looked upon its silent wreck, they saw not only the scars of battle but also the symbol of a bygone era, when battleships ruled the seas, and their duels decided the fate of nations. The Bismarck story endures as both legend and warning. Power alone cannot guarantee victory, and even the greatest war machines are bound by the same destiny as the men who built them. After the wreck was found and studied, the legend of the Bismarck only grew stronger. Survivors who had escaped the sinking decades earlier finally had their voices heard again. Many described the chaos of those last hours, fire sweeping across the decks, comrades trapped below, and the deafening roar of shells tearing through steel. They remembered the order to scuttle the ship, a final act of defiance to make sure the enemy could never claim Germany's pride. For Britain, the destruction of the Bismarck became a rallying point, a story retold as proof that the Royal Navy would never be broken. Newspapers called it "justice for the Hood," and Churchill himself praised the fleet for carrying out one of the greatest hunts in naval history. For Germany, however, the loss was devastating. With Bismarck gone, no battleship could ever again threaten Allied shipping on the same scale. From that moment on, U-boats became the backbone of Germany's naval war, but the age of the great battleships was already beginning to fade. And yet, the memory of the Bismarck lives on. It has become more than just a ship, it is a legend, a warning, and a symbol of the fragility of even the mightiest war machines. Every rusting plate of steel lying on the seabed still whispers of the triumphs and the tragedies, of men who fought until the last moment, and of a vessel that, though it sailed only once into battle, carved its name forever into history. The birth of a monster. Launched in 1939, the Bismarck was the pride of the Kriegsmarine. Over 250 meters long, armored like a floating fortress, and armed with 8 15-inch guns capable of smashing any warship in existence. Germany believed it had created the ultimate weapon of the seas. But Britain saw it differently, as a threat that had to be destroyed, at any cost. On May 24, 1941, in the icy waters of the Denmark Strait, the Bismarck met Britain's pride, HMS Hood. Within minutes, a single salvo struck the Hood's magazine. A blinding explosion split the ship in two, sending 1,415 men to their graves. Only 3 survived. The world was stunned. The Bismarck had proven its power, but in that victory, it signed its own death warrant. Enraged, Churchill gave the order, "Sink the Bismarck at all costs." The Royal Navy unleashed one of the greatest hunts in naval history. Carriers, cruisers, destroyers, the entire Atlantic B. But that very victory became the Bismarck's death sentence. The Royal Navy, shaken by the loss of HMS Hood, unleashed its full might. Dozens of ships and aircraft scoured the Atlantic in what became the greatest naval hunt of the war. On May 26, a single torpedo from an obsolete Swordfish biplane struck the Bismarck's rudder, jamming it and sealing her fate. At dawn on May 27, the British fleet closed in. Battleships King George V and Rodney unleashed a storm of shells. Hour after hour, fire and steel rained down until the mighty Bismarck was reduced to a burning wreck. Her crew, refusing to surrender, scuttled their own ship to keep her from enemy hands. At 10:40 a.m., the pride of Germany slipped beneath the waves, carrying more than 2,000 sailors with her. Only 110 survived. Thus ended the voyage of the Bismarck, a ship that in a single mission shook the world, destroyed Britain's greatest warship, and then perished in one of history's most dramatic battles. A legend of glory and tragedy, forever resting in the cold depths of the Atlantic.